We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talk Stros. You can find the show at Locked On Astros. Your team every day. Brett, where can they find you on Twitter?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter and Astros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
And it is Clay Hensley Wednesday. I don't know what we're calling this, but it seems like we're going to have Clay Hensley on every Wednesday to talk Astros off season and what moves are going on. So where are you at? Apparently you're not at the Deer lease anymore.
Well, no, hey, big difference there. It's Deer Ranch. We own
Deer
that
Ranch,
one.
okay.
So Deer lease is one of the lease, but no, we are not there anymore. We are back in Houston, Texas, right outside of Houston in Pearland at our house here. But you can find me on social media at Twitter at chensley32 and on Instagram at Clay Hensley. And I think that's pretty much about it. But other than that, you guys can find me on these podcasts from somewhere around the region. Well, when you guys catch me, that's where I'll be.
Alrighty, and guys, we are going to be talking about all the non-tenders in baseball. There are a lot of teams that are bleeding money right now, and they need to try to make up for that. So there are some interesting names who were released today, non-tendered contract. And so we're going to talk about that in this podcast. We're going to talk about which one of those could be with the Houston Astros, and we'll talk about that a lot more. You can get Locked On Astros on a podcasting app, Himalaya, as well as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And when you get in your car, tell your smart device to play the podcast, Locked On Astros. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Go to BuiltBar.com and use the promo code Locked On, and you'll get $10 off your first order. All right. So, Clay, Brett, let's talk about some of the interesting names. Let's look at the outfielders. There's one Twins outfielder that is very appealing.
That is, you talking about Eddie Rosario, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, he is an interesting person to throw out there because he was a huge contributor to what they called the Bomba squad out with the Minnesota Twins. He earned some what they call down ballot votes for AL MVP each of the last two seasons, but he really has struggled at the plate to be disciplined. And he makes an interesting option because A, he's at a lower salary, but B, he can hit the ball and he's got one hell of an arm. And this may be a guy that you could go out and get and help fill any outfield holes that they may have. If you're not able to get Brantley, if you're not able to sign Jackie Bradley Jr., if you've got to stick with Miles Straw and Kyle Tucker and you got to have that third guy, Rosario might be your man.
Look, hey, anything like that's always possible, right? Anytime there's a non-tender out there that, has put up some decent numbers, looks like they may have struggled a little bit, this past season. For me, it's still kind of hard to kind of gauge the value on some of these non-tenders as well as what you're able to get, what you can really put them in because it was such a small season, a small sample size. We keep going to the fact that I think we get lost in conversation with talking about how what somebody did or what their numbers were last year. To be honest with you, it's hard to kind of make that assumption of what they're going to possibly be able to do for a ball club going into this next season in 2021 if we're having a full season next year because we got a small sample size. So, I think a lot of the potential candidates of, what Houston could possibly bring in if they aren't able to sign Brantley back or if they aren't able to bring some of these guys back, which I still feel that, Brantley is going to be somebody they're going to end up bringing back. I don't think that they're going to go out and find the same production out of anybody, whether it's a non-tender candidate or really realistically on the free agent market. There's a lot there with Brantley in terms of, he's been with the ball club. He knows the club. He knows what he's going to get. He's, like we said, we keep talking about the opportunity to get to the postseason next year, which is going to be a big deal for him to factor in where he goes. I think there's still those talks are going to probably supersede anything that Houston's really looking at for a lot of these non-tender candidates. And I mean, look, when you're talking about this particular one here, there's a significant drop off a little bit from his last year's just even batting average. But there again, it's a small sample size. A lot of guys go through slumps and they go ups and downs. And that small sample size of a season last year could be what was maybe the tick down for the numbers or whatnot. And if it was the whole scope of the season, would he have come back and trended up towards his typical averages? I look at this as a move more so from Minnesota's side, is that they're going to see what's out there. He obviously didn't figure into their plans whether that was something that was inside the locker room. His numbers were pretty decent, while he was there. So it kind of begs the question: is the type of guy and the character he is. That factors a lot into these non-tender types, because you're always going to protect somebody that not only is putting up some decent numbers for the club, but if you factor in for the future for a club, and you put up decent numbers, to tender a guy, to hold a guy up, keep him on the 40-man roster doesn't take a lot. So it just kind of begs the question: is what else is there that we're missing?
Yeah, another big surprise was Adam Duvall of the Braves. He's somebody that was third in the league in homers last year with 16. Granted, at the beginning of the year, I said if anybody hits 20, that's impressive, because it's such a small season. So for him to hit 16, that's great. But the Braves already went out and signed Charlie Morton, Drew Smiley, and they're trying to go out and get Marcell Ozuna. So this was a way for them to kind of cut some salary. And I think they saved what I don't see 5 million. So 5 million here, 5 million there does mean something in the business of baseball. Another one who's interesting is Nomar Mazara. He's one that the Astros have faced a lot with the Rangers, and this is a guy who was traded last year. And Carlos Rondon. I know this is not an outfielder, but this is a pitcher, and I don't know, Clay, how long you've been in the Houston area or been following the Astros, but there was a whole back when Rondon was drafted, there was a tank for Rondon that hashtag going around Houston, like we're going to suck so we could get Carlos Rondon, and then we'd even draft him that year. So, but it's amazing how everything comes about, and now he's non-tendered by the team that drafted him. So first of all, Adam Duvall, Nomar Mazar, are any of those guys better than, or even Rosario, are any of them better than Michael Brantley?
Personally, you can't say that they are, right? Because look at this situation, just from the optics, stepping back. Not if you're somebody who hasn't even been following any of these guys, you look at where they're at. Okay, so Brantley's in a position of strength, free agency, able to, coming off at what was it, a 3-year contract with Houston. These other guys are 2-year contracts, excuse me. These other guys are coming off of situations where they're either being released out of their contract, non-tendered, or aren't re-signed or aren't brought back. So I think personally, Brantley is going to be a tough one to fill, because look, the production has been there since he was with Cleveland. It's been there for year after year after year. He's put up some pretty dang, decent numbers. And I think that, look, in his position, often, to test the market, to see what's going on out there, look, you don't get that as a player very often. And when you do, you got to test what's out there. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about security for you and your family. I don't see him getting dollars that he probably would in a typical off-season environment if there wasn't the pandemic that had struck everything. And honestly, look, the owners, that I will say, probably the first time it's ever come out of my mouth, are hurting in a sense, in terms of loss of dollars and loss of revenue. They did feel that sting. That's why I don't think there's going to be a lot out there in the open market of what a lot of these players are expecting to have as a typical season would probably reward them with. So that being said, I don't see these guys filling that shoe. And I also don't see necessarily Brantley out the door, because at the end of the day, he's not going to get the dollars that he typically would. If he could get something that he would be happy with, comparable to what he was making even last season, maybe a tick up, and an opportunity to go to the postseason, why wouldn't you sign back with a team like that? So I think we're going to see him come back.
Yeah, I think, when you look at guys like Rondon, a little interesting fact. We actually, when we moved back to Texas, Eric, we were looking at a house over in the Pearland area, which is zoned to like Shadow Creek High School. And he has a house over there. And we almost bought a house that's on the same street as him. And I remember thinking, oh, it's really cool. I get to live down the road from a major league pitcher. Maybe I could like play catch with him or something. But of course, I never met him, and we actually didn't end up moving there. But Nomar Mazara, I think, is interesting because he was such a massive prospect. Like when he came up, he had high hopes, and he has underperformed in every category. And that's interesting that you bring that up, Clay. Like, why are these guys non-tendered? I think some of it has to do with economics. And I also think the other thing is you're like, if they did see value and if there's not a ton that they're having to invest to tender them, then what else is there or not there that they're seeing? Kind of like when the Cubs non-tendered Schwarber. And I mean Schwarber's was supposed to
No,
be a big part of this team,
no,
him and Bryant
no.
and all these guys.
We
What?
don't
No,
need him.
what?
We don't need him.
No,
I know.
I'm not saying
We already
for
have
the
a
Astros.
DH.
No, listen, I'm just saying he's an interesting person. All these guys that have some upside to them. You're wondering, just is there just not room? Are they going in a different direction? There are a lot of like pitchers, like Archie Bradley is out there. Hansel Robles is out there.
Those last two
Some
names are
interesting.
those last two names are very interesting. I know Robles struggles with command at times, but he
Yes.
he he could be dominant as anybody. And Archie Bradley, he is a interesting cat. I would love to have him in Houston. Just imagine him and Zach Greinke on the same team.
Well, here's the thing, Ken. And you can speak to this, Clay. I believe it was Ken Rosenthal said that he believes that the relief pitcher market in this post-COVID market or pre or COVID market, whatever you want to call it, the relief pitching market is going to be more depressed and slower than any other position on the field. That relief
It always
pitchers
is.
are going to take a huge hit. So
It always is, and it's not coming from a biased position of it, but like, a lot of the unsung heroes that you see especially now in the playoffs more so than anything is coming out of the bullpen. They're not rewarded as such. Think about the long guy that's got to go out there and eat up innings in a playoff situation when either they're getting boat raced usually or maybe the team's up. But um, the back end of the bullpen seems to get a lot of the glory. They've just recently, I guess, over the last maybe 8 years or so, started to receive some of the benefit. I think that's well deserved. Like holding when we started applying to the holds and stuff to the offseason and adding those metrics to the resume of what a reliever's doing throughout the season. But they are the I guess essentially the player that's probably least valued, but in a funny way becomes the most valuable when it comes crunch time and in the playoffs or in the World Series situation, as we've seen. So, it was already a depressed position, as it was, I think. And I think obviously more so it's going to be under the environment that we currently find ourselves in right now with, I would say post mid end pandemic. I don't think anybody knows when the end of this thing is going to come around, but hopefully we all pray that it's going to be soon. But look, both sides of the table are going to be using this to their benefit in terms of negotiation. Looking at some of the stuff when we're talking about even Rondon and being non-tendered, he did have a slew of injuries. There was injuries that hampered him to be able to perform its best. How much that has been going on throughout his tenure when he was with Chicago and just in his career in general, because again, a lot of the injuries that you may see pop up on the ticker or the line when a guy hits the DL isn't necessarily indicative about how much the guy's hurt, because they'll slow play situations. They'll put people on phantoms. They'll hold people back, maybe starts and whatnot before they go on the DL. So injuries can be significantly longer than what we're really seeing on whenever it finally gets to the public arena, whether a guy goes on the ticker or not. So it seems to me like, look, he went under, with Rondon more specifically, going under Tommy John surgery, limiting starts and innings coming up to this particular point right now, probably played a big factor. And when you start looking at that over the grand scheme of things, of guys that maybe knocking on the door or prospects you have to protect, you start to weigh the odds of like, well, who do you want to lose in a Rule 5 draft, or who do you want to lose in a potential trade, or who can we non-tender? And if we can still keep them, if everybody's seeing what we're seeing in terms of injuries of why we non-tendered him, maybe this guy still becomes available. We re-sign him, which is something that Chicago actually is talking to Rondon as we speak about. That's not necessarily factored out of their plans. I would say on that particular move right there, it was more so that they needed to protect some guys as opposed to kind of worry about taking the chance of losing him, given the fact that he's coming off some injuries.
Yeah, looking at his ERA last year, it's kind of depressing at 8.22 ERA, and it kind of makes you want to eat a Built Bar just to kind of build yourself up.
Yeah, I think he needed to eat a Built Bar.
That's right. Well, I actually had one of the special holiday flavors today, white chocolate cookies and cream. And my wife told me it was outstanding. And I believed her, but I wasn't ready for it. I was blown away. Like, not only did I have a Built Bar, I was kind of on the down slope of my day where I had high energy. We're talking about the road to the Texas Revolution. We're almost at the Alamo. So I'm excited. And dude, I just had this mid afternoon, I'm 45-year-old crash, grabbed the Built Bar. Man, it got me right back up, gave me energy, gave me what I needed. I was able to finish the day under 200 calories, 17 grams of protein, 4 grams of net carbs, only 4 grams of sugar, and it was the perfect snack and the perfect pick me up. So go to builtbar.com to get 20% off your first order when you use the promo code Locked On. You won't go wrong. You won't want to try any other protein bar after you have this, because it's like a candy bar, but it's good for you. And it's good for the healthy, conscious guy or girl. So go grab Built Bar and use a promo code Locked On for 20% off your first order.
And it makes you want to put your squirrel hat back on after you're done eating it, right? Remember the Alamo when you're out there screaming at the kids.
Yes, my coonskin cap. Yes, sir.
All righty.
Oh, man.
So before the show, about 16 minutes ago, according to Brian McTaggart, the Astros have made some big signings, and that's actually they tendered contracts to their 3 arbitration eligible players, which is shortstop Carlos Correa, starting pitcher Lance McCullers, and the Ledmez Diaz. The club also announced that it agreed to a 1-year contract with right-hander Austin Pruitt. Austin Pruitt, we don't know how long he's going to miss next year, how many innings is he in pitch, but I think the Astros saw enough in his potential to say, okay, we'll go ahead and tender your contract and we'll go ahead and do this. But no, this does not mean we signed Correa and McCullers to a long-term deal. This is just to avoid arbitration, and this is something that I know that Jeff Luhnow would do the file and trial and just basically just say, okay, this is what we're going to pay. If you want to go to arbitration, we'll do it. But this is interesting that James Click is saying, you know what, Carlos Correa, Lance McCullers, they're a big part of our team. We don't want to see these guys in arbitration. We want to go ahead and get that done. That way we don't have to have this. We know kind of how much we're going to have to play this guy. But as somebody who's Carlos Correa in his final year with his on his contract, Clay, what do you think this means for the Astros to make this move? We don't know how much it was for, but what does this say to Carlos Correa?
Well, look, the team wants you, right? They're making every effort right now. They're putting their best foot forward to keep you in a position to where we can still keep these talks going. Like we said, nothing has been released yet in terms of what was discussed or what the contracts may look like. But this is a manner to where they're putting their best foot forward, saying, look, we want you here. Let's keep these talks going on. Let's try to nail something down sooner than later. We want you to be an Astro for the foreseeable future. So it's a great move. I think it's something that the Houston Astros fans should be feeling really good about. And I think that it sounds like whenever this kind of stuff goes on, that Correa's camp as well as Houston might be very near on announcing something that's going to be long-term and making sure that Mr. Correa dons that Astros uniform for some time in the future.
Yeah, I think that the Astros are smart that they get a deal done like soon, and they get the deal done before Lindor gets signed, before any of these other traded, signed. But when you get traded, you're going to sign a deal, right? And I think you've got to get him a contract first. Yeah. I think Carlos Correa, because then you can kind of set the bar or set the ceiling. You don't have someone else setting it for you, because someone else sets a table and it's a steak dinner. Carlos may want not just a steak, but he may want a bone-in ribeye with extra sides. So you go ahead and get him. Try to grab a hold of that loyalty thing. Hey, Springer's gone. Springer's out of here. You're the man. You took the team. You put him on your back. You made predictions. You hit game-winning home runs. We need that. You stayed healthy. We need that. And so I really do hope that they keep him. I know that there was a lot of talk for about 24 hours because everybody freaked out, including me, about the tweet about the Astros floating him in a trade. And that was apparently, and we talked, maybe it was right information, but it was leaked. But if the Astros can't, here's the key: if the Astros can't sign him, Carlos Correa, it is now on him to stay healthy, to perform, and to earn his money. And then the pressure falls on him. I think, though, he's grown into the player where he can handle it.
Well, real quick though, look, they're bringing him back. He's arbitration eligible for the third and final time before he hits free agency. So
Right.
you know, at worst case scenario, look, he's coming back. It's a 1-year agreement if all else fails, right? But what
Right.
their goal is now is to extend him. So what they're going to want to do is, as far as I'm seeing from right now, when you tender a guy a contract who's still controllable, quote unquote, so to speak, has another year before he reaches free agency. All right, this is his third and final time of arbitration through the process. So at minimum, he's going to get the highest available out there for 1 year of arbitration paid for in the third round.
Yes.
Third round through arbitration. See what I'm saying? So he's controllable still. So he's an Astro. Okay, until they trade him or they come up with any other reason, right? I mean, look, they've tendered him a contract, so at minimum he's going to get what he demands for this third year. Now, what they're going to try to do though is they're going to try to buy out the free agency coming up next year, and they're going to try to buy out at least being the fact that he's so young, they're going to try to buy at least another 5 years out of there. So I'm looking at him potentially coming out of this thing with a at minimum 6-year contract, 7-year contract as they negotiate this. At minimum, he's going to be here already under that arbitration eligible third round to it. You know, they got control of him. He's not a free agent yet. Okay, so they have him on that, but I think they're going to lock him in. I think we're going to find him walk out of this thing, whether by the time opening day happens, because this is going to be a negotiation probably till then. But by the time opening day happens, they're going to kind of try to create at least maybe a 8-year contract with an option to potentially opt out after year 5. But they're going to try to lock him up for some time being, because like I said, we've said this in the past, this is their window really for Houston to maintain the foot on the neck, trying to get in the playoffs every year. They have that team that can do that. That's a small window in the grand scheme of things. So look, for the next 4 to 5 years, you want this guy there. This guy's Mr. Clutch. I don't care if he goes 0 for 0 for the season. He always comes up big in the postseason for Houston. And he's done that year after year that they've been in the postseason. I mean, he was almost a big reason why Houston went back to the series again this past season. So I think they lock him up for a multi-year contract at minimum. Look, he's a Houston Astro as far as it stands right now. He's still got 1 more year before his free agency. So they got to come to agreement on that 1 year of arbitration, the third round through it. That year is what they got to come to an agreement on. Otherwise, they're going to be headed to court.
Yeah, and I think just avoiding the whole arbitration hearing and meeting with the arbitrator, and that's if you want to extend a guy, you don't want to go through and say, well, we think he's not worth this value, blah blah blah, all that.
Exactly. It would shoot. You're 100% correct, because what it does is that shoots them in the foot for any type of negotiation going into any type of extension type talks. Because I don't know if you guys are familiar with the arbitration process, but when you actually do that, it's pretty much you're sitting in front of a panel and they're telling you how much you suck, and you're trying to tell them how good you are to the team. And then when it's all said and done, it's like, hey, well, we didn't mean it. You know, we agreed on this. They said this, and shake hands. We're on the same team now, right? And that would make for a hard dynamic to negotiate any type of extension. So I think you're 100% in saying that, Eric. I think they probably aren't going to they're going to do everything possible to avoid an arbitration hearing. And I think we're going to see him locked up for some time.
You know, it's amazing when you look at his career earnings up to this point. He's earned a total of, well, with the if he gets 9.1 in 2021, whatever they give him, he'll have earned about 24-25 million. But signing a big contract, he'll be making probably close to that per year. Talking about a pay raise, I mean, it's absolutely astonishing sometimes. And we kind of talk about it flippantly, but I cannot imagine being in that position. I mean, he is getting to sign a contract to, like you said, set his family up, not just for now, but for generations to come. And just phenomenal. A friend of mine, his son just went to his select team, had like a baseball camp in Houston, and Carlos Correa, JC Correa, I believe his father, I believe his brother, they were all there, and they were giving the kids individual instructions. And
That's
he was
awesome.
like, well, he was like, you know what? He goes, I like Carlos Correa before this, but I like him even more now. He's like, he took time to talk to my son about a
Right.
swing. His dad took time. And that's the kind of player you want. I think he's a genuinely good ball player. He's great for the game. I like his confidence. I like his arrogance. And like
You're
the
right. You're 100% correct in what you're saying about him. And that's the thing. Look, I think a lot of people, maybe fans more so that are watching the game, start to lose the aspect of, these guys are human, man. We are all human, right? And it's like you get put on such a, I guess, somewhat like a different level or pedestal that, like, it's a holy cow, he talked to us or whatever. The reality of it is most of the people that are out there playing ball that are Major League Baseball players, most of them are just like you and I talking shop, and nobody likes to talk about their craft more than what you're specialized at. I mean, if somebody's talking to you about anything with history, or we're dialing into that, like you get up for it because you're passionate about it. Same thing with baseball. The good thing is there's guys out there like Carlos that are still humble, and still love to talk shop with a kid one-on-one about his swing, and that's not, it seems like such a big deal to maybe on the other side looking at Carlos Correa doing that, but on the side of being Carlos Correa, that just shows what kind of guy he is, and it just shows that he hasn't forgot where he's come from. He knows who he is. And I appreciate hearing stories like that because, today, in today's age and the way baseball is going as we speak, you don't see a lot of that. There's a lot more dig me out there than there is, concerned about other people and what they want to hear and learn about the game. And I appreciate that. And you got to think about this little flags here. You think if the guy was on his way out, that he's hosting camps, that he's staying involved in the community, you kind of start to peel back a little bit if you're on the way out, because you don't
true.
want to get too locked in or have your roots too much in the community if you're on your way out. So I like hearing little stories like this because this makes it feel a little bit more like I think the guys around here to stay.
You know who else was non-tender today? Clay Holmes. He's
Oh,
in
I
there.
thought you were gonna say. I was like, man, I've been non-tendered, so can it be me already again? Still, they're still non-tendering me. Jesus.
Yeah, but one name that's interesting is Nick Tropiano. This was an ex-Astro. This was I forgot who we traded to him. I remember we traded to him to the Angels, but I don't remember what we got in return. But there's some other really interesting names. Chichi Gonzalez. I just like that name. We talked about this the other day. Jose Arena with the Marlins. This was somebody we talked about before. But David Dahl with the Rockies. This is a guy who is a can't miss prospect, and he had a bad year last year, but the Rockies just said, okay, well, you may have all the promise in the world, but we want to move on. And so this could be a good low. He was a 10th overall pick in the 2012 draft. So yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
Well, before this year, his rookie season, he had 63 games. He hit 315. 77 games in 2018, he hit 273. 100 games, he hit 302. David Dahl is still a very good player.
Yes.
I just remember he's actually one of the guys that I still have, like, I have these like young star binders. I still collect cards, and he's in there with Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. And but I think he's got a lot of promise. And I didn't even realize, I don't know how I missed his name. But that may be someone that you can bring in again if some of these guys don't work out. You could bring a guy like David Dahl in. I know he batted 183, but he only had 93 at bats this last year. So who knows? I think the sky's the limit, but not all these clubs are going to, quote unquote, let these guys go. They just, right now, they haven't offered them a contract. I believe they can still bring them back down
Yes,
the
they
road if
can.
they want
I
to,
think
because
the
they're a free
Astros did
agent,
that.
obviously.
The Astros did that with Chris Davinsky last year. He was due to make like 2.8 million, if I remember correctly, and they re-signed him for 2 million. So they saved 0.8
Oh, that's right.
million. So it was something like that. So Clay, you're about to say something?
Well, you see, here's the deal. Like, I'm trying to pull it up right now, but let's look at his splits, okay? Because we're talking about Colorado as well, and there's a lot of inflated numbers there.
I knew that was coming.
So, yeah, I mean, and the reality of it is batting $1.83. I mean, that's a tough. How do you protect that? All right, even so, you got to figure half the games are in Colorado. Batting $1.83 is not doable. I don't see that getting better in a hitting situation that isn't more beneficial for a hitter. So, I'd go back and look at all the splits at every number, even the years that he had put up good numbers. What are the road numbers like?
Oh, the road numbers away. He hit 226 away. He hit 161 at home. That was in
226. Yeah, 226 isn't anything to write home about, So you got to figure that's what you would be getting in Houston.
Well, that was also in shortened season, right? That was 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he struggled last year, and so maybe that's why. I know they had some good young prospects trying to come up, and even
so here it is, Eric. Here it is. Home in 2019, 349, 9 home runs.
Yeah.
Away,
like
254.
That's still not bad. That's not.
No, it's still not bad,
terrible,
but that's 100 point That's 100 point difference. Okay, my bad. Okay, y'all can scrap what I said. Just listen to what Clay says.
Okay.
Take
what I say and do the exact opposite.
No, it's something to look at, but then you got to dive a little bit deeper in the numbers, and that's exactly what any of these guys are looking at. Some of these non-tenders are like, what do you do on the road, especially from a guy coming out of Colorado?
Right.
Even with pitchers, you're like, okay, how do you pitch on the road, even if his numbers were inflated, because they can give you the wrong story. So there is a little bit of you got to dig into some of the metrics, but hitters should not be that there shouldn't be that big of a disparity. If you look at the great hitters playing in Colorado, look at the road numbers, and then you can kind of get an idea where a guy truly is.
So listen to this, his 2018 numbers real quick. It's even worse. 326 at home, 200 away.
There you go.
Well, that's 2019 numbers.
Yeah.
Boom, roasted.
All right. So, Clay, while this is the annual non-tender day, were you ever non-tendered a contract in your playing day?
Yes, I was. I was non-tendered after 2008, I believe. And then I signed a 1-year contract actually with Houston right after that. Came to camp, and I was coming in as the 5th starter, and then Astros signed Russ Ortiz right at the end.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so then I opted. I had an opt-out on my contract, and so then I accepted my assignment to AAA, and then opted out of my contract. Then I signed with Florida right after that, and then it was good to go.
All righty. So you heard it. How did it make you feel when the team just non-tendered your contract? Is it just some part of the game, or?
It's part of the game. Look, I was coming off injuries as well,
right.
And at the same time too, you find out real quick it's a business. Okay, so as loyal as the team may potentially be, that's what I'm saying. Like, you go to the arbitration process, they tell you how bad you suck, and then they love you after it's all said and done. But it's a business, and it worked out good for me because I was able to wind up in Florida, where I had some of my best years, and I ended up closing there, and kind of allowed me to springboard my career. So you kind of once one door shuts, another door opens, and you got to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you.
All righty. And unfortunately, this door has got to shut. That's about the end of this Locked On Astros podcast. Clay, once again, where can they find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at chensley32 and on Instagram at Clay Hensley, I believe. I don't know. I have to double check and look, man. I've been giving this bad handles all week.
That's fine. So on our next show, we're probably going to be talking something about the Astros offseason and maybe the free agents we need to go after. And but it's kind of day by day right now, because you're like, okay, what's next? What's the next signing? What's next move? This Austin Pruitt thing, that clears up one thing, but when is he going to be ready? So there's a lot to talk about. So make sure you tune in every day to the Locked On Astros podcast, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
So, hey, Rip